Ready? Play.
Alejandro Davidovich Fokina and Carlos Alcaraz will contest the opening semi-final tomorrow in Monte Carlo. Let's begin with Alejandro's straight sets win over Popperin today. I mean, I guess Popperin's bubble had to burst at some point, and probably a more focused David Fokina than he has been at times this week. He's spoken a lot in press and in interviews, hasn't he, about his lack of focus and how frustrated he has been with himself at times and apologizing to his team. What did you make of his win over Alexei today?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, John, just because I mentioned it yesterday in terms of once you mention that and he's open about it, I feel like that allows him to kind of reset mentally and come out on the court with a maybe a bit more composure or understanding in terms of an approach. And yeah, today it was a very clinical match. I mean, talk about not facing any break points and Poppy Rin kind of playing with house money in a sense where it felt like he was kind of out of it first root, and then he burst back and kind of came in here with an opportunity to show himself. But credit to Foki for staying solid and start to finish. Couple of tight games there to start the match, but he came through those, and then he got an early break in the second and kind of ran away from there.
I guess a lot of the headlines, though, from today will come from the Alcaraz feast match, which I think I tweeted along the lines of, from the sublime to the ridiculous to the pretty awful at times, but it made for an entertaining affair. There was some incredible shot making from both players, the athleticism, two of the most aggressive players and offensive players on tour. They did pull it all out, but there were moments when both players were way off it. And for Feast in particular, probably in that third set as things ran away from him. But let's think about Carlos. Let's think about his level. How confident should he be ahead of this semi-final with Alejandro Davidovich Fokina?
I think he should be confident. He showed it today, as you said, at points where, he's almost unplayable, but he has a clear mind in terms of, point construction and taking the ball early to get to the net and finish points. Also good use of the drop shot, even in, tough shots from the baseline where Fees hits such a heavy ball and has a lot of spin on it, so it's difficult to deal with. But, I think it's kind of the same story with Alcaraz. Like saving these break points is the difference for him, especially at 5 all love 40. And you talked
Mm.
about it with Fees going into that third set. Um, had a chance to kind of reset and got the early break, but Carlos didn't kind of flinch. He gave himself a look in the next game, with convincing holds, and ultimately, maybe the pressure at the moment was a bit too much from
Yeah.
Fees and didn't really, go full force and um, kind of playing with a little bit of tension. It felt like so or
Mm.
Alcaraz was able to take advantage of those moments and trust his guns a little bit more. What do you
Yeah,
think about
definitely.
that?
Yeah, no, definitely. It did feel like I felt that Feast was sort of caught between the two, between going for it and not going for it. And when he did go for it, the tension was apparent, and he would miss by some margin on occasions, and also miss somewhat surprisingly. So I think you're right. Alcaraz, having been here, seen it and done it, probably managed the occasion a little bit better today. Will he do so tomorrow in his semi-final with Alejandro? Quite possibly. I probably, like many people, felt that maybe his most difficult match, not in terms of ranking or even perhaps the opponent, may well have been today, bearing in mind his potential opposition in the final would be possibly Tsitsipas, and I think that matchup is incredibly favourable for Carlos. But I am getting ahead of myself because I want to focus on this match tomorrow. The head-to-head is 1-0 against Davidovich, and I was at that match in Barcelona. I think it was a quarter-final. I'm just going to check right now. Yeah, it was a quarter-final, also on the clay, so similar-ish conditions. It's not like a
Mhm.
Madrid at altitude and all the rest of it. I look at Barcelona, Monte Carlo, and Rome as they're sort of in a
Mhm.
bunch that gives us some
Yep.
indication for Roland Garros. Madrid is always a bit of an outlier, but Carlos actually tends to excel everywhere as well when he's on
Right.
it, and he was on it at times today. But listen, that match in Barcelona, just before I get your thoughts, that match in Barcelona, I remember that, and that was actually his toughest assignment en route to that title from memory. I can't recall who he beat. I think he might have beaten Cerundolo in the semis, but he definitely beat Tsitsipas very, very comfortably in the final. And it sort of began a sort of Carlos Tsitsipas matchup where it was like, okay, I think they played once before in Barcelona, but by 2023, this was a new and even more improved Carlos who was about to go on, of course, and win Wimbledon.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, that was a really, really tight match. I mean, it was a tie break in the first, and that match could have gone three, and who knows where it would have gone had it been the case. But a lot of people probably forgot that as Carlos, won the title, I think, that year without dropping a set. How do you see things going tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it has the potential to be tight, especially in the start. We talk about, or we look at Carlos's, run thus far, and it's just been kind of a streak of shaky starts in a sense, where he takes a little bit of time to get into rhythm, and the opponent has a lot more opportunities at the start of the match. I feel like so. I think an important thing will be how he begins the match. For Fokina, he is such a good athlete where he's able to, extend points. And even in those cat and mouse um, points, he has, I guess, an upper hand. I mean, today he was 4 for 4 from points at the net. So between, two of the better athletes on tour, I think that gives him a chance to at least extend rallies and give himself looks, but he's going to have to be aggressive. And I think Fokina is, comfortable doing that because he does have an offensive game, especially the forehand where he can, flatten it out, take it early, and get to the net as well. So I think he has the tools and weapons, but once you're going up against another Spaniard, and obviously I guess this match will kind of be in both their heads. It was a very tight and competitive one, as you witnessed. So I think there's nothing really to be afraid of for Fokina in this match, but he does have to, take his moments. You're muted. You're muted, John.
Yeah, no, I think he does have to be aggressive. Talking of which, Chilich has just leveled things up, so we're going to a third here. Excuse me, because I probably won't even edit this out. I'll leave it in
Why
just for
not?
the fun of it. There may be some Chilich fans tuning in as well, and get in the comments below and let us know what you think about Marin ahead of the French Open. But yeah, no, I do think Davidovich Fokina has to be aggressive when he has his chances. He's got to take them. It's often the case when you are the underdog. I don't think it's unfair to call him that ahead of tomorrow. I think even more so if this was a first round, second round, first match for Carlos,
Mhm.
particularly on the clay, and we know how his mind can wander. Let's say, Goffin springs to
Mhm.
mind, Popperin, was it? No, not Popperin, sorry, Van der
Mhm.
Zandschulp last year in the US Open, and just various sort of unusual losses. They do tend to happen early on in the tournaments that I'm referring to, and it sort of seems to be a lack of focus. I think now we've seen that Carlos has got the bit between the teeth. Okay, he lost the first set today, but I don't think that was necessarily down to a lack of focus. And I think, unfortunately for ADF, it means the odds are more stacked against him, given that in fact it's in the semi-final. As I said before, I think Fils and arguably Cerundolo, those were sort of the two matches where I think Carlos could come unstuck. I fancy his chances very heavily in a final against Tsitsipas or Musetti or De Minaur, as it could well be. Of course, De Minaur has just made the semis. But against Davidovich Fokina, yeah, I think you're right. Maybe a tight first set before Carlos just shows his class, pulling away in the second. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm with you there, John. I think you mentioned it. The moment is important, a semifinal. But, Fokina having such a, successful 2025. He's been in, two finals now. He's played, I guess, bigger matches, not quite 1,000 level, but that's
Eight
where
career, eight career semi-finals, by the way, Brenner. Eight career
yeah.
semi-finals. So, but the problem is, Brenner, is he gets here and then that's eight times he's been very close, and even
Hmm.
twice this year, very close. But he's not managed to get over the line. Now, you could argue that the pressure is a bit off. He's the underdog. In a way, being
Hmm.
a 1,000 maybe takes away some of that pressure a little bit. But, Carlos has been here, seen here, won the T-shirt, right?
Right, right. And Carlos has, something to prove, obviously.
He does.
Just his second time playing Monte Carlo. And, you got to have your eyes on the prize at this point with the the draw now, fizzled out for him. So obviously the clear favorite here. He should take care of business. But he's a fighter. So we'll
When
see.
Carlos gets close, he tends, like when he's this close, like a semi-final, a final, he tends to win. Just like in a different way, the five setters. He's got I think it's 11-12 or 10-11. I'm not sure. Record over five sets. Again, when he's that close to winning, he does actually end up winning. And I'm trying to think, what's his slam final record? Is it 3-0? I don't think he's lost a semi-final, has he, in a slam? Sorry, a final in a slam. Of course, we did have that moment against Djokovic, but that was he sort of learned from and grew from that
Right.
that semi-final in the French Open, and obviously winning Wimbledon a few weeks later, and perhaps as a result. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
going to go for Carlos in straight sets. And you?
Carlos and straights.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.